Welcome all to this exclusive GovNews webinar, the Office of the Future, Stimulating Smarter Working Across the Public Sector. My name is Mark Blanchard and I'm the Public Sector Director for GovNews. I'll be facilitating today's learning exchange and I'll be joined by my colleague Michelle Taryn, who will be handling today's Q&A. This GovNews webinar draws on the results of the Office of the Future Survey Report 2019. And we're going to be hearing from Kate Guthrie, the Smarter Working Programme Director for the Government's Property Agency, which is an executive agency of the Cabinet Office. We've got Andrew Smith, ICT Director for Kyocera. Kyocera were our thought leader partners for the survey report. And we've got Taryn Ozagir, Diversity and Inclusion Lead for DWP Digital. Now, the usual housekeeping to start though, all attendees will remain on listen-only mode throughout today's learning exchange. You can download a copy of the survey report at any point within the Documents tab section on this platform, although we have sent you a version on email when registering for the session. We welcome your comments and questions throughout the webinar, and you can post these in the Questions tab on the control panel. Michelle will try to cover as many of these as possible during the time we have available in the Q&A section later. If we don't cover your question or comment, then those not answered will be forwarded to our speakers for a direct response. And finally, a recording of today's learning exchange will be made available to you afterwards. So without any further delay, thank you for joining, and I'll hand over to our first speaker, Kate Guthrie.
Thank you, Mark. Hello, I'm Kate Guthrie. I'm the Smarter Working Programme Director at the Government Property Agency, the GPA, which is an executive agency of the Cabinet Office. We've been in about existence for around 18 months, so still a very new organisation within government. And we're really, as an agency as a whole, trying to create great places to work for around 400,000 civil servants. A little bit about me. I've been working in and around workplace transformation for about 17 years. Most of which has focused on smarter working, flexible working, agile working, a number of different names, I guess, for very much the same thing, as well as wider organisational transformation and change. I joined the GPA around about 18 months ago myself, just at the inception of the organisation, and have a small team dotted all around the country, working with all 43 government departments and their executive agencies to support, challenge and guide them in their implementation of smarter working. So I'm going to talk through some of the things that we're doing within the GPA and some of the things that wider government are doing in order to create great places to work. And we're really starting to create the Office of the Future. And hopefully you find this an informative session and look forward to some of the Q&A at the end. So in terms of the context, Smarter Working sits, I guess, as one programme amongst a number of other programmes designed to test and deliver and implement the government strategy. We're very much just one programme. We work alongside lots of other specialists across government in HR, in estates, in technology, security, health and safety, as I said, in order to try and create great places to work. So just a little bit about each of these other programmes. So Places for Growth that you'll see at the bottom there, they really set the strategy for the roles that need to remain within central government and within central London, and those that actually should be moved towards each of the regions across the UK. The Government Hubs programme is building the accommodation, first-class estate that those people within the regions will then work within, and I'll talk a bit more about that later on. And the Whitehall campus is being developed within the centre of London for those roles that will remain right in the heart of London and right at the heart of civil service decision making. And all of that really is underpinned by the programme that I'm leading, which is Smarter Working. And that's really about pulling all those together to drive the right behaviours, the right ways of working, and to make sure that we have the right workplace and technology in place to create great places to work. But as I said, this is part of a much wider transformation that's taking place all across government, that's looking at how all of our people work, how they interact, how they communicate together. So I just thought it might be helpful just to pick up on some of the the history, I guess, of smarter working. And you'll see that it's been quite a slow, steady and gradual evolution from what was very traditional ways of working in the 90s and sort of way before my time in some ways, right up to where we are now in 2019. And very much, and many of you listening to this may be familiar with some of these things and some of the challenges, I guess, that were around at the time. So the 90s saw various traditional ways of working. Our office estate was broken up into small offices. People worked at the same desk, they went to the same desk every day. Furniture was large, IT was large. There was no such thing really at that time as laptops and mobile devices, particularly not in government. IBM obviously at that time was still, I think, one of the leaders in this space, but government certainly was nowhere near that level of connection and interaction that some of the tech companies were seeing. Into the 2000s, and we started to see a bit of change across government. So we started to see people recognising that actually office estate could look much different, that the things that we were doing weren't necessarily always needed to be done at a desk or in an office, and that technology needed to change. But at this point, I would say we were still very much constrained by traditional ways of working, traditional estate, and very limited, restricted technology. Very few people had laptops. If they did, there was sort of a pool of laptops that people would be able to borrow from, and we were spending an awful lot of money on our estate on technology. Through to 2010s, I guess, things really did start to change. People started to recognise that actually work isn't just a place that you go to, that it's what you do, and that there is a much greater need for connectivity, interaction, wherever people are working. Within my own experience and within many of the government departments, we started to see workplaces change, walls were taken down, open plan working became far more the norm. But it was probably still a focus on desking, desk share ratios. You know, we were obsessed, I think, across government with ratios of desks, how many desks per how many people. And probably focus on outcomes wasn't as strong as it could have been, but we were certainly getting a lot better within government. Remote working in different offices was also becoming more of a regular thing. Through to last year then, and the estate strategy was published. And that meant that all government departments had to adopt smarter working. Smarter working became government policy, and that was a real breakthrough for many people within government, both individuals, teams, leaders, and organisations as a whole. And it really meant that the leaders right at the top of the civil service were buying into this concept that actually work's something we really do. We need to be focusing on our outputs and our outcomes, and less so on where we're going to work. Of course, we need to balance this with some of our other programmes across GPA. So the Government Hub programme that I mentioned, that's looking at the types of accommodation, providing first-class accommodation and office accommodation for people, that's very much puts people at the heart of the office space. It's about providing working spaces that reflect and match the type of things that people do today. So we're trying to balance, I guess, the need for people to be flexible, to work in a location where it makes sense for them to work, but also allows them to come together, to connect, to socialise when they need to. And now today we're about to publish the Government Workplace Design Guide. Hopefully that will set, I guess, for years to come, how government and how the civil service will work in their workspace. It will always develop and always evolve as we've seen smarter working, as we've seen technology, as we've seen workplaces evolve. And it'll be interesting, I think, for me to see how far we can push our workspaces, our technology in the future. So I mentioned that smarter working is now government policy. On the slide, you'll see that there's a commitment here that's been set on all government departments. We use PAS 3000, the Smart Working Code of Practice, as our own standard to which all government departments are trying to, or striving to achieve. And that very much covers people, culture, technology, workspace, and leadership. And as I said at the beginning, we work with all 43 departments to help them to deliver what is a really ambitious target of 70% of organisations adopting smarter working by 2020. and 100% by 2022. So a real challenge, I think, not just for us in the GPA, but also for every department and individuals working within those departments. When we kicked this off about 18 months ago, we did an exercise with all departments to understand where they currently were in terms of smarter working. And you can imagine that that really varied from some really mature organisations where smarter working has been just part of their organisation DNA for many, many years, compared to some departments that are literally just starting off. So we're having to tailor our approach, tailor the support that we're providing to departments. So I'm just going to play a short animation. For us, this just brings to life what we mean by smarter working. As I said, it varies for everybody, and I think that's one of the key challenges, is understanding what's right for you, what's right for your organisation. But this, I guess, is what we see as smarter working.
The way we work is changing. In recent years, significant advances in technology mean that many organisations are changing the way they do business. A shift is taking place that recognises work as a thing we do and not just a place we go. This change is known as smarter working. Smarter working gives us greater choice in where, when, and how we work, depending on what we're doing. And balancing this with the needs of the organisation, colleagues, and our customers. In reality, this means working in a variety of work settings, not just at a desk in an office, and having the right IT and tools to allow us to do our job effectively wherever we are. It means planning the week flexibly around work and home commitments, and being trusted and empowered by our organisations and our leaders to make smart choices to achieve outcomes. Across government, departments are implementing smarter working with some great results, like a better work-life balance, quicker delivery of outputs, and decision-making and better utilisation of office space. Government workspaces are changing. Government hubs are being created. Standards are being set, and a much greater emphasis is being put on the outputs we deliver rather than where we deliver them from. The transformation is saving money, reducing waste, and increasing productivity, with varied workspaces and areas allocated to activities. So when we collaborate, need to concentrate on an individual piece of work or attend a meeting, combined with everything else we do in our working day, outcomes are delivered and achieved in the smartest way possible. Smarter working empowers the whole organisation to be more efficient and collaborative, which ultimately helps to make the civil service a great place to work. Make sure you know what it means for you and your team. How will you make it a success?
So as I said, hopefully that just gives you a real flavour and a feel for what we really mean by smarter working. And one of the key things there really is, it is about individuals, but I think more importantly, it's about teams and getting this right for teams and the organisation. And there's bits in there that you might feel are not quite appropriate for your organisation. And that's the real thing I think about smarter working and the workplace of the future, is working out what really works best for you, for your teams, and for your organisation as a whole. So for those of you that prefer words over images, over animations, we've also put this together as well, which really just pulls out, I think, some of the key points of smarter working. I mentioned that it consists of people, workspace, technology, all coming together and supported by our corporate leadership to make sure that smarter working works for you, for the individuals within your organisation, for your teams, and for your organisation as a whole. So just a few points to pull out really. It's really important that people feel empowered and trusted to make the right choice about where and when to work in order to deliver the outcomes that are important to them, their teams, and the business. And we really want the civil service to be an employer of choice. And I think probably over the years, it's fair to say that recruitment and retention has been a real challenge for the civil service. And through smarter working, through driving the right behaviours, through giving people the right work-life balance, we feel this is one of the ways that we'll really be able to achieve that increased retention of skilled, diverse individuals. Within the workspace element, we're looking very much at providing smaller, more modern workplaces that provide spaces that really reflect the type of work that people do. There's no need to go to a desk all of the time, every day in our working lives. So we're providing different workspaces that suit modern working, whether that's task space, whether it's collaboration space, social space, project space, quiet space. And we're really putting people and well-being at the heart of those spaces. And in terms of technology, we're trying to create a digital workforce. Technology has increased, as we all know, just significantly in the last few years, and that's taken away many of the constraints that we previously either perceived or were real in terms of smarter working. But it's really important, I guess, that we're not just talking here around, and people don't think we're talking just about remote working or home working. For us, smarter working can apply whether you're in an office and choosing the right space in that office for the activity that you're doing, or whether you're working remotely at home, in a cafe, on the train, wherever really it suits you to work. So just in terms of some of the benefits, probably things that everybody and hopefully that you all recognise in terms of cost savings, reduced and more efficient office estate, perhaps less travel, both individual and business, increased productivity. And this is something that you may yourselves be struggling to try and quantify. And it's quite a challenging topic that many people across both government and in lots of organisations are tackling with. And I think there's lots of groups now that are being established across all sectors really to try and take this forward together. But productivity can come from many places in terms of the office estate and the lighting and the air quality, through to just that sense of engagement, empowerment, feeling part of an organisation. The apple and the donut is very much around choice and increasing personal choice. Where do you work? When do you work? How do you work? As long as that's balanced, as I said, with the needs of your team and the organisation. And then really turning up that dial on work-life balance. And that's a really big thing for us. It has to be about delivering the outcomes of any organisation and business. But actually, if you can increase an individual and team's work-life balance as part of that, then even better. That's not to say we all recognise the benefits, but clearly there's still some challenges that we face within government, but I'm sure that many other organisations themselves face too. One of the key ones really is this kind of inconsistency and inaccurate understanding of what we really mean by smarter working. And for me, that has to be the part of any organisation's first steps in kind of creating the organisation of the future. What do you really mean by smarter working yourself, and how do you want it to apply in the organisation? We're finding that many see it just as kind of, home working, flexible working, flexi time, but it really is much more than that. And it's about looking at how you work and thinking about where's the best place, when is the best place to do your job. There's still an overemphasis on presence in the office and presenteeism, and not so much around outputs and outcomes. It is changing, and technology is helping us to really challenge this. But I think it's fair to say, certainly in government, it's probably one of our biggest challenges. And linked to that really is history and traditional ways of working, particularly in the centre of government, and particularly at the moment in London. There's then some real and perceived, I guess, constraints around security and increased security that comes with working in government. And of course, we've got funding issues, but actually there is so much that you can do through addressing some of the people aspects of smarter working. And as long as you've got the right mobile technology, actually your workspace can sometimes follow on behind that. So just very quickly, what we're doing to support government and to help them address those challenges. As I said, I've got quite a small team. We're creating a number of toolkits, documents, products, online learning development. We're going into organisations. We're helping them to understand what smarter working really means for them, both from a leadership perspective and for teams and individuals. It's going to take quite some time. As we said, we've got till 2022 to get this right. But actually, through addressing many of the behaviour, many of the culture, the ways of working elements, we really think that we can drive smarter working across the whole of government. It's not just us that are doing this. As I said, lots of departments have their own smarter working teams. But the great thing is we're really working together to try and share good practice across government. And we've got lots of different collaboration networks, both inside government and outside as well. We're working very much across all sectors to try and achieve, I think, pretty much the same vision. So lots of different groups coming together, sharing their ideas, sharing their learning, sharing their best practice, and trying to overcome some of these challenges, the things I talked about, like how we really quantify the benefits of smarter working. So I just wanted to end with a couple of case studies, just to show you some of the things that are happening either in central government or across some of our other executive agencies. Ofgem is one of our, I guess, real successes in government. They've moved into one of the first government hubs in Canary Wharf, into, for us, fantastic state-of-the-art accommodation. Workspaces are now defined by the activities that people do, with Wi-Fi and great conferencing throughout, so that people can connect and stay engaged, whether they're in the building or whether they're working either across the country or overseas. And there's been some real great savings, some efficiencies, but also some improvements, I guess. And you'll see the bottom point there, Ofgem's rise in their people survey. That might seem like a really small rise, but that's actually really significant for that organisation and for civil service as a whole. And then the final case study is GCHQ. And I've included this really just to show that actually, given the security constraints that they're under, they've really thought differently about the technology that they use, the jobs that they do, and how they can best do that in the office, and for some people as well outside of the office. And it's really important for them. They've got a very neurodiverse organisation, given the type of work that they do. And they spent an awful lot of time working out what's the best technology for those individuals and for all individuals within the organisation. How do they best work? What should their workspaces look like? What should their behaviour, their culture, their ways of working be? And they've really become a role model across government now, as if GCHQ can do it with their security constraints, then any part of government and civil service and any organisation really can introduce smarter working and drive this kind of outcome focused working. Thank you for your time, and I'll hand back over to Mark.
Thank you, Kate, for that presentation. I'm sure we'll have a number of questions to throw your way later on. But for now, we'll move on to Andrew Smith at Kyocera. Andrew, over to you.
Thank you, Mark. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us on this webinar, The Office of the Future. I'll be talking around how the public sector is evolving, the opportunities and threats, and how you can adapt to meet the rapidly changing expectations. I'll be focusing on the results that stand out to me, how organisations are and will be using technology, and the challenges being faced. Kyocera is a worldwide organisation helping organisations with products and services that accelerate their digital transformation. We're most known in the public sector for our document solutions and managed print offering, but we're also adding value to our public sector organisation through managed services, including infrastructure, connectivity, unified communications, content services, also known as enterprise content management, ECM, and support services. I'm Andrew Smith, Group ICT Services Director, and it is my responsibility within the group to take our comprehensive services to market and deliver first-class service delivery. We recently partnered with GovNewsDirect to research and conduct a survey which gauged the public sector's progress towards smarter working and how technology and users are shaping this. The research engaged 406 employees across 348 public sector organisations. We focused on 5 levers of change: the relationship with the customer, ICT, the workspace, staff, and finally the future in 10 years' time. The first area I'm going to discuss is around the adoption of technologies in the workspace. This is often an area I discuss with my local teams, and on this very subject, the application over the technology itself. Under the section of relationship with ICT, we asked the research participants about their cloud adoption. Only 12% said they were rapidly adopting, 45% said moderately. This will, however, grow in the next 5 years, with rapid adoption up to 33% and moderate adoption up to 55%. Factoring those who answered slow, 95% of public sector organisations will be using cloud, even though it has been a buzzword for many years. This is what we are seeing in our own client base. As cloud pricing becomes more transparent, clients are now looking at this as a viable option to reduce ongoing costs, improve agility, outsource business outcomes to specialist providers. We see users are very much demanding more, driving cloud-based file management with clear indexable data to help them work in a more agile fashion. When asked around adoption of automation, 64% of organizations will have a major or considerable adoption of automation in 5 years, up from 21%. In fact, 84% of organizations will be using automation in some way. We believe this is very much in line with the cost reduction approach, and companies need to remain agile and relevant in the market space. In the past, we have seen a stigma when it comes to automation around employees' redundancy, expecting to see a robot in their chairs. But actually, we're seeing organizations are using automation to gain a competitive edge, relevance, and market position. We frequently saw in the research comments regarding the challenges facing in public sector being chronically under-resourced. By automating low-value, repetitive tasks such as invoice processing, organizations can place their resource into more value-add tasks around relationship building and providing a distinctive customer experience. We see customers demanding self-serve to gain faster and more responsive service. Kyocera are leading with their IoT development with our fleet management service with built-in AI and automation. This is enabling us to automate parts of our service delivery, for example, in service consumables. When we asked research participants how they describe their use of AI, it indicated to us it may be sluggish adoption versus cloud and automation. The interesting point is that 39% are not sure how they'll be using it in the next 5 years. Personally, from our experience, this is strongly linked to understanding levels of real-life adoption of AI and how this can provide business results. People can understand Alexa and Google Assistant's use in the home, but often do not realize that this is a use case of AI and how similar technology may support their business aims. AI use is not just focused to automated voice control systems, but rather the use of dynamic data sources to allow machine learning and actions without intervention. We therefore believe this is an educational piece for the public sector on what AI is and how it might be used in reality. Kyocera is seeing real-life application of this technology with use of personal assistants supporting our staff in their day-to-day routines and activities. When we discuss print, which may be seen as a lagging technology, we see that the value still exists. In 5 years, 96% of organizations will still see value in print. Kyocera don't necessarily believe in a paperless office, rather we believe in less paper. The older generation are predicting a faster reduction in paper in the workspace, having come through a period of great change through the smartphone era. The younger generation are not predicting such a fast reduction, but rather more valued use of the output from print. When we asked around bring your own device, the biggest surprise was 38% state bring your own device is currently unauthorized, and 42% are not sure how they will approach in 5 years' time. Employees and customers are now wanting to use their own devices. It's important that organizations cater for this. This, however, is a double-edged sword. The more devices connected, the more routes cyber criminals have to enter the network, hence presenting security issues. We see in real life that there are challenges both in SMB and enterprise level around the adoption of bring your own device in real life scenarios. Risk-averse organizations are reverting to blocking rather than investment to contain such deployments and environments. As cost control continues to be a driving factor, we are a strong believer that shadow IT will force this agenda and its use. In future, when organizations are creating their security strategy, there is a need to consider any device anywhere. With the use of conditional access, multi-factor authentication, and possibly not using passwords at all in a real life scenario, this is very much hot on the agenda. An example of this is when employees could access cloud-delivered applications on their personal devices using their company credentials. We are seeing this more and more in the environment today. I'm sure it's no surprise that IT infrastructure and IoT devices are the two most common security priorities. IoT being the fastest increasing concern coupled with bring your own device. We often see organizations implement security strategies and think the job is done. Cyber criminals are increasingly creative at finding new ways to infiltrate networks or access unauthorized information. It's important to routinely monitor, review, and update security strategies. In real life, we see some of the biggest providers, such as Apple, adopting push updates to increase the speed and adoption of patches to always stay a step ahead of the next security threat. In business, there is a need to partner with managed service providers to continuously manage the security landscape. The next lever of change we will discuss is how the adoption and advancements in technology are going to impact the workspace. We asked research participants around their organization's reliance on fixed location workspaces. When asked, the percentage of those who agree goes from 55% now to 22% in 5 years. Whereas in the past, organizations would have a head office and employees would be expected to be present, the future office is a series of satellite offices where employees can hot desk and log in thanks to cloud technology. We are seeing examples of this in the public sector already. The benefits from cloud and content services also means that despite not being in the same location, employees will be more collaborative. 55% agree in 5 years versus 33% now. There will be less reliance on fixed location workspaces. The working culture will have less effect on employee performance. The final lever of change we will discuss is around customers and how their needs are changing the office of the future. When asked if their organizations meet customer user expectations, only 42% responded with a confident yes, though in 5 years, 79% of organizations are predicting to achieve this. We know that customer and user expectations are continuously progressing. We saw in the report that 92% of organizations will experience a high level of digital transformation in the next 5 years. We asked, do you feel your organization needs to restructure its services to meet customer expectations? We saw in the previous slide a high level of confidence in meeting expectations in the future. We believe this is through the recognition of the need to change, through such adoption of automation and cloud technology. However, to achieve this, organizations are going to have to be agile and restructure to realign with customer expectations, supported by 81% of respondents. Looking at the office of the future from a 10-year perspective. In this final section of the research, I'd like to discuss the 10-year view, where we ask respondents to look further into the future. As we have discussed, the adoption of automation and cloud is going to further increase, with 42% of organizations answering that their use of technology will be automated. 89% of respondents believe that mobility and remote working will be important or very important workspace feature in 10 years, giving employees even more efficiency, scalability, and flexibility. We discussed the need for greater education and best practice sharing to aid technology, real-life use, and benefits. A good example is where we have discussed previously is artificial intelligence. We can not only improve efficiency, for example, automated chatbots, but also have the potential to rapidly solve complex problems. Despite government drives, only 5% employees think their organization will be using AI in the future. AI adoption will continue to be slow until public sector understands real-life use cases and broader education and best practice sharing is adopted. This is a similar case for bring your own device technologies. Finally, digital transformation and supplier relationships will be fundamental in this journey of change. IT departments and organizations' workloads and landscapes will continuously evolve, and there will be a real need to source differing skill sets and resource to remain agile, up to date, and deliver the office of the future. This is supported by 48% of respondents stating their reliance on managed service providers will increase. As public sector requirements evolve and become more complex, including technologies such as cloud, AI, automation, and increased security concerns, IT departments' resources continue to be stretched. It's very unlikely that they'll have the time or expertise to plan, implement, monitor, and improve all of these whilst keeping up with customer and user needs. Organizations will instead seek the expertise and support from managed service providers to help deliver their office of the future. So to summarise the discussion, from the research, we know that the use of process automation will accelerate. Less paper, not paperless. Buy-in from AI will continue to be slow. Cloud will help mobility and flexibility with remote working, and security will become a bigger concern through IoT. The two key points, I believe, is that change is consistent. The answer isn't simply to plan and implement, but to remain agile in regards to the 5 pillars the research focuses on, by monitoring, assessing, and evolving regularly. Managed service providers will help you as strategic partners achieving the ever-progressing goals and the office of the future. Thank you for your time and thank you for listening. I hope we've provided some thought-provoking analysis for you. If you have any questions or if you would like to discuss one of these areas we have covered, please email officeofthefuture@kyocera.co.uk. I'll hand back over to Mark.
Appreciate that, Andrew. Thank you. Keep your questions and comments coming in. We'll endeavour to cover as many as possible after our third and final speaker today. Taryn, over to you.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Taryn Azagir. I lead on diversity and inclusion, and I work at BPDCS Limited. For those of you who have not heard of BPDCS, we're a public limited company, but we're owned by the Secretary of State, and we work with the Department of Work and Pensions, providing digital services, employing a very range mix of technical professionals from software developers through to agile delivery managers, and then some internal resources such as people managers and HR. So diversity and inclusion is a really huge part of what we do. We think about, we need to reflect the diversity of not only the organisation that we deliver for, which is the DWP with around about 120,000 employees, but our diversity also needs to reflect the customers in which we're building software for. So we have around about 22 million users across the UK using software on pensions, using software like universal credit, and even things like ordering a new passport on gov.co.uk. So fostering a really inclusive environment is really, really key to what we do. One of the things that we've done to really firestart our inclusive culture is introduce a smarter working policy. And that's kind of the theme of my talk today, is how flexible and remote working can really help you embed an inclusive culture in what you do. Now, looking at the data that was collected on the survey, one of the most poignant questions for me is, in the next 10 years, how important will the following workspace features be? The top one being mobility and remote working. Now, there was almost a unanimous vote on that. 97% of those people considered it to be important, 67 of which considered it to be very important. Now, when you start to think about the psychology behind why that's important and sort of why these people think it's so important that we put a focus on mobility and remote working, it's because it gives them the flexibility to be who they are and do what they do in their lives, as well as provide great outcomes and great work and great services to their employer. Now, I want to cover some of the themes of why it's important and some of the reasons why we introduced our smarter working policy. And some of the key pillars of what it supports is well-being, family activities. It will help us and it will help you retain your staff. It's also important not to do it all of the time. There's certain parts of what you deliver and certain pieces of the employee journey that require that face-to-face interaction, and that's where we've added some balance into our policies. It will help you attract great and diverse talent, and it will support the diverse culture that you've built within your organisation. So starting with well-being, this is really, really key to a lot of companies' employee journey now, is to making sure that people have a really good well-being experience, whether that's physical or mental. Inclusion is about making people feel like they belong, but well-being is about making sure people are happy and healthy while they're at work. So when you think about it, my talk is about being able to work anywhere, anytime, and that's kind of the approach that we've taken. Our smarter working policy that we've implemented allows people to control their own working life, and all we ask is that they deliver the outcomes, that deliver great services to our customer. So when you think about the well-being aspect, it allows people to balance those fitness activities, which have become such a key part of our society at the moment, and it allows people to have a more sustainable and home-cooked diet. When you're looking at well-being trends at the moment, you're looking at people quite heavily focused on plant-based foods. People are quite heavily focused on making sure that they've got a great metabolic diet with regular meals and small home-cooked meals. It will also help you reduce employee stress by eliminating commutes. And this helps our sort of infrastructure in the UK. It will reduce pressure on traffic and pressure on public services. And it would also give people more focus in their day to spend time on their work rather than worrying about quite a stressful commute. It'll also allow people to balance home duties. So, you know, cooking, cleaning, washing, all of those things really that are important, an important part of your life, especially if you've got a family. But allowing people to work flexibly and remotely will allow people to balance their time, complete those duties, but also complete their work. But it's important if you're going to work remotely for mental well-being that you use collaboration tools such as Slack, Microsoft Teams, those sorts of things, so that people can really collaborate remotely and make sure that you get that nailed. Looking at the family aspect, now this is really important. There's so many diverse types of families in the UK that we're now pushing, and it'll increase interaction in the family. So reducing pressure for parents to find childcare so that they can balance their time and spend quality time with their children and their families, as well as, you know, completing the outcomes that they need to do in their job. It will also make sure that people won't miss those key moments. You know, when you think about if somebody's working 9 till 5 and then they're putting their children in sort of before school clubs, after school clubs, it'll also help them make sure that they don't miss those key moments. And it supports all family models. You know, there's more less conventional families appearing now, and allowing people to work when and where they need to deliver the outcomes will help support that model. Retain, so, you know, working remotely, working flexibly, especially in the tech industry, is starting to become a kind of expectation for employees, really. You know, there's that, isn't there? Their office is your PC. With modern technology that we've got now, you know, VPN software, all the mobility software that we have on there, the security software, gives us that flexibility for people to be able to do this. So it's more of a question as to why they can't rather than why they can. And working remotely is expected in the sort of recruitment market of tech. Leading employers promote this as part of their package, and that's something that we should do in order to not just retain but attract great talent. The technology will support us to do this. So there's various pieces of software, like I said before, that can help us collaborate digitally, but also help you being able to access all the tools and the files and the things that you need. And this will help embed an outcome-focused working culture. You know, I think gone are the days of the kind of clocking in and clocking out. It's not really about where you are and when you're there. It's about what you deliver. And if we can reduce it and remove those barriers about, you know, needing to be somewhere at a certain time, people can really focus on the goal, which is to deliver great services and great outcomes for the business that they work for. Now, it's important that you don't do this all the time. I think when you think about software companies and project teams adopting kind of visual ways of working and agile methodologies, I think it's really key that you keep those face-to-face ceremonies. And then maybe it's a question about thinking where they take place to be inclusive, how often they happen. I know personally, I design those recipes with my team. So I allow my team to work flexibly, work remotely to deliver what outcomes they need. But then I also ask them the same question. When we get together, what would you like to see from that? Where would you like to get together? What would you like the outcomes of that session to be? And the team becomes sort of self-organizing and self-managing. You know, and as well, I think from a well-being perspective, you need that face-to-face reaction. You need to see some smiling faces. You need to know kind of about the extracurricular stuff that's going on in the organisation. And I think it's key as leaders, really, to use those opportunities when we get together to really push the messages and drive the culture that we want to. Attraction. So without a doubt, remote working and flexible working is becoming the norm. Lots of companies now are, you know, managing to reduce the need for permanent workspace and reduce the need for corporate travel by adopting this culture. but also based on what I've just said around sort of retention and diversity and a great experience, this really is becoming the norm in the market. I think so it's important that we keep up to date and we keep ahead of the game, really. Let's see this as a benefit. I think this is a benefit for everybody, really. When you take a step back and look at the organisation, we don't have to kind of occupy large workspaces. You know, we don't need to create collaboration zones all the time. And by offering remote working, people can create their own spaces that they're comfortable with and do as they see fit. And this will also allow us to access a global talent pool. You know, there might be an amazing person out in Canada who can do that job, but traditionally we would have kind of excluded that candidate from the opportunity to apply for a role because of where they were. But actually, does it matter? If they can deliver what you need to do from Canada, you know, from that mountain lodge in Nova Scotia or wherever they are, but if they can do that, then let's welcome them to the table. I think that's a really, really big key part of why companies are doing that at the moment. And supporting a diverse culture. So I manage a diversity and inclusion strategy, and I could probably amplify a third to half of some of my commitments in my strategy by utilising a smarter working policy. You know, when you think about if somebody's got a health condition that they're managing, and we can be flexible about where they're working and the time that they work, it gives somebody really the opportunity and the empowerment to manage that condition. Or if you think about somebody's neurodiversity needs, say if somebody is autistic or Asperger's and they really sort of struggle in loud and bright and busy environments, allow them to create their own environment in which they can flourish. You know, as a business, we can then reap the rewards of them delivering great stuff for us. And think about families and households, and you know, I think gone are the days when you think about diversity and inclusion down the route of those sort of 10 protective characteristics in the Equality Act. Now looking beyond that, you know, we're looking at family status, we're looking at people's social activities, you know, we're looking at people's sporting activities as part of well-being, you know, we're looking at basically everybody feeling like they can balance their life and belong to a great company and manage that relationship and control that relationship. So whatever we do in this space, all it's going to do is open doors. What we just need to do is make sure that our technology, our processes, our tools and our policies support us being able to open those doors. So the question really is, why should we think about remote working? Well, I would ask the same question and flip it. Why wouldn't we? You know, if we can still deliver great services as a business, and we can acquire the technology that allows people to do this and control their own time, surely that's going to be a great thing. You know, I'm yet to see a negative outcome. I'm trying to think about, I would probably say the only thing that you really need to get right to avoid any sort of negative outcomes from implementing a policy like our smarter working, which is kind of work wherever, whenever, would probably be that face-to-face bit. So you've probably really got to nail, especially when it comes to working agile and thinking about the ceremonies that you do and your stand-ups and your meetings. You've really, really got to nail that. And I think success of that comes from asking your team how you want that to work and making sure that that delivers for you. Over to you, Mark.
Thank you, Taryn, for that insight, and thank you to all of our speakers today for sharing their views. In the coming weeks, GovNews will have much more to bring you on smarter working across the public sector, including details on our new partnership with the Government Smarter Working team for the 2020 Smarter Working Live Conference and Awards Programme. Keep an eye out for those announcements before the end of the month, but in the interim, I'm now going to hand over to my colleague Michelle for the Q&A. Thank you, Michelle.
So the first question is for Taryn. Sometimes it feels that diversity and inclusion is more of a box ticking exercise, but without strong leadership, it's hard for any organisation to move forward. How open has DWP leadership been to embracing a more diverse team, and what's the evidence?
Okay, that's an interesting one. So the box ticking exercise one is a question I get a lot, really. And I think what we're actually doing is throwing away the boxes. We're using mentoring schemes, and we are throwing people out of their comfort zones. When I think about what we're doing at BPDTS, we are pairing people to lead on a certain part of our D&I strategy from our leadership team. And we're purposely pairing them as part of the strategy that is a little bit out of their comfort zone. So when I think about the person who leads on, who is very active in our kind of winning new tech group and is very passionate about sort of our gender part, well, what we've done is we've assigned them the LGBTQ plus part to make sure that really they are, somebody in leadership is throwing themselves out of their shoes and doing something different. And they are communicating and working closely with a group of LGBTQ plus in the business to make sure that the leadership team do have visibility and are embracing more diverse teams. So I suppose that's my answer, really. Throw yourself out of the comfort zone, and we are throwing our leadership team out of their comfort zone.
Here's a question for Andrew. It's interesting to see that most of the survey respondents feel that print will still be a valuable function in the future. In your view, how does this idea of not going completely paperless fit into smarter working principles?
If we look at the government smart working principles around people, workspace and technology, we believe the way print is utilised will change quite significantly in the future. To support this, we believe that the associated technology around print will change as the environment changes as well. We believe print fits in with the agile working practices that will become commonplace as users' environments change. We believe that users will need to print from anywhere and be able to pick up from anywhere, but in a quality way, and they'll value that quality output in a different fashion than they possibly do today. We still believe that print is a valued output, and that's really around different work streams and how people are coming together to collaborate. We've heard within this webinar around collaborative workspaces, etc., and about how people will be working differently. And really, we believe that print output will become part of that as that evolves, and how the principles and that will aid that as we go forward.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. There's another question that's come in. It looks like it's for Kate. You mentioned a few challenges you've faced. In your experience at GPA, what has been the most significant challenge to implementing smarter working?
So I think it probably comes down to leadership and almost the, I guess for leaders, smarter working can mean very many different things. And there's still a perception amongst many leaders of, if I can't see the individuals that work for me right in front of me, then how do I know that they're doing their work? So it comes back to trust, empowerment, and ensuring that people are clear on what they're doing and how their objectives link into the wider objectives of the organisation. We do many sort of sessions and workshops with different organisations and with individuals, and I think this idea of trust always comes up as the biggest thing. For us, I guess it's starting off with leaders themselves and working through with them, well, what do they really understand smarter working to be? How do they want smarter working to be adopted within their particular organisations? How can we start from this point where people feel genuinely trusted and empowered to make the choice themselves about where and when to work? And we work with them to make sure that individuals have outputs or objectives, that meet, as I said, the organisational objectives. We work with them to understand actually whether their concerns are real or perceived, and to see whether actually individuals have the right things in place, whether it's team or individual ways of working, agreements. We don't like to call them so much rules or protocols, because I think putting rules in smarter working just doesn't help it at all. But it's making sure that individuals, that teams have got agreed ways of working, that people have the right tools and technology, that they can stay engaged and connected wherever they are, whether it's in a different office, at home, traveling, etc. There's often some perceived security risks, and there are obviously some very real ones as well, but it's working out which ones are sort of perceived blockers and which ones are real that we actually can overcome, that we can put things in place. It's making sure that leaders have the right skills and that they're role modeling smarter working themselves. And as I said, it's making sure that teams have ways to stay engaged, to stay connected. And often actually with many of the leaders that we're working with, it's through proof, making it work, through just giving it a go, that they can start to see that smarter working actually can work. But yeah, that I would say is the biggest challenge, is around not having people in front of you. How do you know they're actually working? How do you know they're delivering? Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Kate. Another question's come through. It says, we say that as a civil service, we want to be the most inclusive employer in the UK by 2020, but there are still only small numbers of ethnic minorities in leadership, and some organisations have a long way to go with progressing on LGBTQ issues. Can you offer a few tips on how we can practically address these issues?
Sure. I mean, there's kind of two questions in there, really. So there's a question around diversity in leadership. I have been asked this question umpteen times, and I think I'd throw a question back at that question. So there's two types of diversity. There's visible and there's invisible. So if you're talking about a diverse leadership team, I would ask you the question, can you see if anyone's autistic? Can you see if anybody's trans? Can you see if anybody is a single parent? Or you might even be able to see if anybody's pregnant. I think what we tend to do is focus on the things that are easy, so the visible ones. And I don't think we should be working in a way where we are purposely adjusting our leadership teams based on diversity. I think we should be arranging and constructing our leadership teams based on skills and based on what they can deliver, and then giving them the right agendas to increase diversity in the business. And I think in terms of companies, some companies have got a long way to go on progressing LGBTQ plus issues. I think companies have got a long way to go embracing all sorts of issues. But when you're talking about LGBTQ plus issues, the only sort of advice I can give is throw yourself out there. So form an LGBTQ plus network in your business. Get some of your LGBTQ plus people to talk to you about what they want, you know, what issues they feel they've got in your organisation, what you can deliver back to the LGBTQ plus community, whether that's supporting local pride or working with local LGBTQ plus foundations to get more sort of LGBTQ plus people into your business. Just talk to people, throw yourself into the deep end. You know, I've really educated myself over the last year. You know, I'm openly LGBTQ plus, so obviously I've got a good insight into that. But I throw myself into sort of women's networks, and you know, I've thrown myself into Afro tech networks, and I think that's how you learn, and that's probably the best advice I can give. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Taryn. Another question has come through for Andrew. Government culture is complex and very different to most non-government bodies. Has Kyocera worked with a specific government organisation? And if so, what has your approach been, and how well did you feel the staff adopted the tech?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we couldn't agree more on that particular point. We often see complexity and stretched workforces and very established cultures within the public sector. And this has certainly been present in lots of the projects where we've worked with public sector organisations. We've worked with many local central government bodies as well as NHS trusts and education establishments to really gain some real life experience of the environment, and we think that that is really essential to being a service provider to this particular sector. It's really around that understanding and, you know, using some of the language that we've heard here today around, you know, that trust in understanding that they know their environment, they know the complexities and how that works. So I think that we quickly learned that there is certainly no one size fits all for this particular sector, certainly from a technology approach, but rather we need to understand the current pain points and implement change in a structured way without putting additional strain on the operation. I think this is quite difficult to achieve, but Kyocera make a significant investment in understanding government's culture and their ways of working. In this way, we commit to really improve our approach, and we speak with lots of the public sector organisations that we work with today to really make sure that we continue to understand and don't get complacent in our knowledge of the complexity and the working practices within the public sector.
Okay, thank you. We'll need to make the next question our last one, and it's for Kate. It says, we have adopted flexible working in our organisation, but there's a clear divide between those who prefer to work face-to-face, as they want that immediacy of communication, and those who work better from home. How can you strike the right balance of smarter working when different members of any one team want to work in so many different ways?
Yeah, and I think that's a very interesting and a very real challenge for many, and actually picks up on what Andrew was saying around there's no one size fits all. So I really do genuinely believe that smarter working as a whole, as a concept, does work for everybody. But there's different elements of it that obviously will work better for some and less for others, and some may only be able to adopt some of the elements if they're perhaps within the office environment, while others will be able to adopt all areas. But I think the first thing is understanding as a team and as an organisation, what does smarter working really mean for you? How far do you want to really push it? What are your aspirations? And what are some of the concerns that individuals or people might have? And I think it's about having open and honest conversations about those sort of things. For me, as I said earlier, it's about the team working together, and that means that everybody in the team has to really understand how it's going to work for them, and there has to be some flexibility. We've put in place, and we work with departments and suggest they put in place things like team principles and ways of working, agreed ways of working. Face-to-face collaboration is still really important, and I think there always has to be time for teams to come together, whether it's for kind of one-off workshops or planning days, but that face-to-face time is still really important. And then the use of technology, there's so many great collaboration tools that are now available to us that it's making the most of those and making sure that people know how to use them properly. My team, as an example, we work all over the country. Some people choose to work from home because it suits the type of work that they're doing, but that's not an option really for everybody, given the types of roles. So we just have to make sure that as a team, we're content with that. We're still talking to each other, that those that are in the office don't feel that they're missing out on anything themselves, that there's still flexibility if you are in the office or if you're not in the office, that we're all trying to reach, I guess, a goal that's shared across the whole of the team, that we're using the tools properly so those at home don't feel isolated. And we have to make sure that we put in things like welfare chats as well for those that are at home, that they're still engaging with the team, they're still involved. And I guess it's just made where we're working from transparent. It doesn't really matter the location that we're at, as long as we're able to engage through technology and face-to-face on occasions, then it's really important. But it has to work for the team, and it has to be about open, honest conversations about what works best for the team as a whole.
Thank you, Kate. So that now brings us to a close for today's GovNews Learning Exchange. All questions and comments that we haven't covered will be followed up directly. Thank you again for attending, and as Mark mentioned, a link to review today's content will be provided to you all soon. Thank you and have a good day.